I think we're live now. Hello, everybody. It's me, GhostCritic. You're live on Pure Comics Podcast. This is number 4. I've got a very special guest today. He's only been back a couple of weeks, but we're all very happy to see him. It is, of course, Scott Koestenbraumstar. How are you doing, fella?
I'm good. Thanks.
That's great. Only 2 weeks back, but you seem to be doing very well already. 2 videos up, and you ruined my podcast with you because I wanted to know on podcast what you were reading now, but then you went ahead and went and did that video, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a bunch of people that were emailing me asking me what I was reading, so I thought if I did that video, then I could just segue into everything else and not have to worry about, telling everybody every other video what I was reading. So
well, let's go in the opposite direction then, because you did mention at the very beginning pretty much of that video that you dropped a lot of books, and a lot of them were image books. Yeah, so I thought, because I've dropped a couple, certainly of Image, and I certainly haven't been picking up a lot of new number ones from Image lately. I've kind of cut back on that because there has been so many. But I want to get right to the point here, and I'm quite upset about this, Scott. Why are you not picking up Deadly Class anymore?
The easy answer would have been that, I don't have enough money, but that's not really, because I was, for the last year and a half, all I was doing was taking in like really expensive DC comics and just trading them and getting credit so I could buy anything I wanted. So that's not really the reason. It kind of started to get into this lull for me, story-wise. The first big arc of that comic was awesome. I really loved it, like the first 8 or 9 issues, and then it just got into some territory that was just, I don't know, it wasn't as exciting. Yeah, and I'm somebody who's really motivated by story and characters, so if there's like really, really interesting characters, then I'm usually pretty good. And I do like the characters in Deadly Class, but the story was kind of lacking for me. So I'm like a lot of people that kind of has the mindset, well, I'll give it another issue. And then that issue comes out and I'll give it one more issue. And I'll do that 2 or 3 times. And I did it probably 4 issues. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't want to read this anymore. So it just kind of died off. I mean, would you say it's still okay?
It's probably in my top 5 current books that I love reading. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. I'm trying to think about then where you kind of dropped off.
I'm gonna say like 13, 14.
So that was. Had you had the kind of love triangle going on yet?
Yeah, I think so. It's been so long, eh?
Yeah. But I mean, at the moment they're kind of doing their it's like their end of year exam, but the exam is that they've all got to kill each other. Basically, it's like Battle Royale.
Oh, nice.
But
nice.
It's just I've just loved that from the very beginning. For me, it certainly hasn't dropped off at all. He's been doing some interesting things with the characters, like you said. There are some really great characters in there, and then you've got the whole art and the coloring. I just think the 80s vibe as well has been a big hit for me as well. We're both the same age, roughly. We're in our 40s, so we were around in the 80s, and there's just so many kind of little kind of Easter eggs and stuff going around in there that just hint back to the 80s, and I just love it. I was seriously surprised when you said that wasn't on your pull list anymore, and I'm like, whoa, if he's not reading that, what else has he dropped?
Yeah. Well, offhand, I can remember a few that I dropped. I know the other one that was a real big one that people I got emails about was Manifest Destiny.
I read the first trade of that, but didn't kind of continue with it. I mean, it's okay, but it wasn't something. I tried it.
Well, I really like the whole Lewis and Clark thing, right? I like that. I like when comics rewrite history and make it all messed up. I kind of like that whole idea. And that was another one that I was actually enjoying. And then all of a sudden, the story just kind of went into the crapper, and it was like, 3 or 4 issues was just kind of boring. It didn't really go anywhere. And I'm somebody who tends to, I don't know if anybody else does this, but if I'm reading a comic and I get in a place where I think it's boring, I start to, in my mind, start writing the comic myself where I think it should be going. So the next issue that'll come out, I'll be so disappointed it didn't go the way that I thought it should have gone in my mind. So 3 or 4 issues of that, and I'm just like, I feel sometimes like I'm like Harlan Ellison, and I'm all this grumpy science fiction writer, and I'm like, damn it, why aren't these people, why don't they write like I write in my head? And then I get disillusioned very quickly, and then I'm like, I'm not buying this book anymore.
Talking sci-fi, I'm glad to see that you still got Black Science on your list.
Yeah, I still get Black Science. Probably haven't read the last 2 issues, but Black Science is something, I don't know why, I have to leave it for about 5 issues, and then I have to go and read it. Because
read it all in one go.
Yeah, because Black Science is one of those kind of issue books that I have a hard time reading like one book at a time, because Black Science is one of those books that I think you said it like when it first started. I think you did a video and you were talking about how like issue after issue, there was so much buildup that by the time the next issue is coming out, you're like, oh, and you burn through it so quickly that you almost have to reread it again because you're so excited. And I was like that with it. And I was like, okay, I got to read this twice, because the first time I went through it, I know I missed half of it. And then I read it again, and I'm like, oh, it's so good. So what I do is I try to leave about 4 or 5 issues, and then I have to make myself go a little bit slower through it. And then if I do that, I enjoy it more. But Saga is like that for me too. I read Saga 3 times through every time, because I'm so excited when I get it. I'm like peeing myself like a puppy, right? I'm like, oh, Saga came out. The first page, I'm like, somebody's gonna be either naked or got a knife in their arsehole. You whip it open, and it's like, what's on that first page? It propels me through that book.
I mean, talking about Saga, I think we can all tell from that it is a book that it's your favorite book. It really does excite you. For me, I mean, I still love it. It's Saga. We had a great time, and it was all crazy at the beginning. It's kind of settled down into this kind of routine. But for me, there's parts of it that kind of seem a little bit, and it's the cynic in me going, they've done this particular panel or this particular shot for that shock value now. Because they don't tend to do that first page, what am I going to get when I open it anymore, do they? It kind of comes a little bit later now. But for me, Saga now feels like it is doing things now just to keep people's interest, to do those quick shock ones. There's a solid story there, I won't deny that. But the heights of that first kind of 6 to 12 issues, I don't feel for me is there anymore. Clearly for you.
Well, I know that for a little while there, like you said, the first 12 issues, I emailed or I Twittered Fiona a few times and said, I'm going crazy. I need to know where that spider chick, but her vagina is. And, she didn't email me back or anything like that. And then one time she said, it's coming up or something like that. And I was like, oh, so cool. And then because we had this ongoing thing for a while where we were like talking about space whale vaginas and where the vagina on that spider chick was and everything. And there was this like ongoing sci-fi saga, female part thing. And I thought, that was fun. But even I found that the parts of Saga that were very kind of subdued, laid back, and just not a lot of action going on. I don't want to say the poorest, but the most non-action Saga is still better than some of the most action-packed indie books for me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It just, the writing is there, the art is, everything is there in that book. Perfect example, another book I dropped was Descender.
All right, yeah. I'm still getting that one. Yeah,
I got the first arc, and you know what the best part of that book was for me?
Mm-hmm.
That book made me go and get my watercolors back out. That had the most beautiful watercolors I have ever seen in a comic book.
It does, doesn't it? The artwork is exceptional.
And I love the story. I loved everything about it. I dropped it after the first arc just because I thought I wanted to free up. I wanted to free some room up for more Marvel stuff. And I know all the Marvel, or all the people that don't like Marvel will be like, boo, hissing and everything. But, I still, like you said, I wave that Marvel flag like a mother. So, but Descender was a book that I'll probably go back and get the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because you've talked about Deadly Class so beautifully, I'll probably go back and get the rest of those too. But
you should. I think you should.
I'm somebody, I don't know about you, but I'm somebody who's like heavily influenced by, the popular opinion of people in the community, right? If I hear a friend saying, oh, this book is really good, and I've dropped it, and they talk about it for like a half an hour, I'm like, I got to go and get that book again. But I'm also the kind of guy that if they flash something on TV, I'll say to my wife, I need to go and buy that.
You're a marketer's company's dream.
Yeah.
What else is there? For me, did you read Birthright?
I did not get in on Birthright, no.
No. Again, that was another one that kind of started off quite strongly. It kind of went the saga route with the whole kind of the family kind of vibe to it.
Right.
I don't know how much you know about it, but basically it's about this kid and he gets somehow transported to this kind of fantasy realm. He was about 6 or 7. He comes back as a grown adult, and he's like kind of gladiator, but he's got a kind of evil spirit-y demon attached to him now. But everyone thinks he's come back as a good guy. But it kind of trod that whole family line of the mother's estranged from the father because everyone thought the father killed the son and all that. And it just started getting a bit messy in that area. Great artwork again in that. But the story just, again, like you said earlier, you wanted the story to go in that direction, but it kind of went that direction. And I didn't like that direction. So eventually, again, I'm kind of like you. I will give it another issue and then another issue. Can I really give this another issue? Yeah. But that went. I say this title with a little bit of trepidation because I always get into trouble when I talk about this. But Bitch Planet. Did you read any of Bitch Planet?
I read the first issue and I hated it so much that I just I know there's just so many people got in trouble for speaking bad about it. You know why I didn't like it? Because it was one of the most contrived comics I've read. It was done for the sake of, do you know what I mean?
No. This is what I've said many times. Probably why I got all the thumbs down. That no one ever said anything to me, but you know, I got
Yeah.
all the thumbs down. Not that I care about them, but it was like as great as Kelly Sue DeConnick is, and I love Pretty Deadly. To me, that book felt like it was only published for the essays at the back and the whole quote unquote feminist agenda.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That those articles have a place. I think it being in a comic book designed to be read by or more addressed to women, females in general. Anyway, you're kind of preaching to the choir,
Yeah.
you know, kind of deal. But the actual concept of the comic, I actually thought was really good. She just didn't take it far enough. She should have gone to the absolute extremes rather than worrying about making everything kind of politically correct. In one issue further down the line, because it stopped and started with solicitation so many times, and she always apologized at the back of each comic. And one of them was, I'm sorry this has taken so long now, because I had difficulty drawing and kind of setting the scene for a female shower scene. Like, well, there's not really much really to think about. You've got a shower, you've got women in them, they're going to be naked.
Yeah.
And I think she kind of, and I said this in previous reviews about it, that she'd kind of drawn herself into a corner, so to speak, trying to be very politically correct when she should have been the most unpolitically correct comic book ever, really, to get the point that she wanted across. It would have worked equally as well. And I just got, after the 5th issue, I was like, she's taken a 3 months hiatus. That's it. Out. Sorry. I gave you 5 issues. You're more worried about the thematic agenda. I hate saying that word because it's not an agenda. It's just it. I don't know how else really to say it. I had no problem with that, but that's what that comic book seemed to be used for.
Well, there's nothing wrong with like writing and drawing or producing a comic that is destined for a certain culture or a subculture or a people's group or whether it's a feminism kind of thing or a movement or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to take into account that people who are into, and you got to remember it's comics, so it's a hobby, right? For a lot of people, there is that small faction of people who don't look at comics as a hobby. They look at it as, maybe a political voice, or maybe it's something other than what it, is for somebody who collects like you and I. But if it's being looked at as that, then, you have to understand that 98.5% of everybody else is looking at it as a hobby. They're getting it because they're invested into it, maybe not for the same reasons as the other people are, right? So if you put a voice to a work like that, you have to be ready to kind of, take a couple on the chin, especially when it comes to, like you said, if you're taking a 3-month hiatus to kind of work out something that somebody like you or me would just look at that and go, I don't get it. Like, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. Then, you're kind of throwing in the same ring as people, and I hate to use the comparison, but there's other people who we know who are like artists and writers who kind of come across as this elevated, art, or this elevated worker of their art, and they're like, I can't do this unless this is done, or it's like I can't draw a picture unless the temperature in the room is at a
diva, in other words,
or something, and it's like, really, man, come on. So everything is subjective. Like, you just got to understand that you're not always writing and drawing for the same kind of people that you may think you are.
Yeah.
people are going to drop books if they don't like it. I mean, in the end, it all comes down to entertainment. And if you're not being entertained, you'll move on to something else that entertains you.
Yeah. For me, it was just a shame that it went in the direction I didn't want it to go in other words. And it kind of got a little bit political, rather than, which is fine, because it's like you say, that there are comics out there that use it as a voice to put a topic across, and a lot of them in the past, would probably have been more underground comics that were doing that, rather than so mainstream that we have now. Yeah, so it's a shame that I was quite down about having to drop that, because I was hoping for big things from that, especially from the first issue. I thought, for me, this is going to go somewhere, this is going to be really big, but ended up not being really. Just trying to think of some other Image titles that I'm picking up that I didn't see on your video. Sci-fi wise, Low, did you pick up that?
I picked up the first, I don't know, 3, I think, issues of Low, and for me, it was okay. I mean, the story was okay from what I remember of it, but the art in Low is really sketchy, kind of. Like it's really, everything's jagged looking in that book. Do you know what I mean? Like it's okay. Everything is like sharp images. Do you remember when? Oh, I knew I was gonna forget his name. Did a lot of stuff for Marvel. That was it. Dustin Niego or
Nguyen. He's the one that's doing Descender at the moment.
Right. Well, his early stuff was like that. It looked like he had sketched stuff, and then it looked like the inker had just inked wherever he put lines. And it used to drive me crazy. Low's got so much stuff going on in their panels that sometimes it was, hard for me to, differentiate what the heck I was looking at. Now that's what I remember, but I don't know if that's the case now, if I was to go back and look at those. But
see, for me, Low, story-wise, it has kind of dragged out a lot, because you've had the whole, we've had this satellite drop down on the surface, and we've been waiting for them to get to it. And the issue that has just come out now, we finally get to see the surface, and it's been like, I think it's about 9 or 10 issues coming, and that for me is kind of not made me want to drop it, but kind of started getting me a little bit exasperated about the title. But the art, strangely enough, I really do enjoy. There are some great design work, I think, with certainly that kind of the costumes, if you want to call it, their outfits, the kind of the underwater environments, and I've been quite excited to see how that's going to change and compare to now he's doing kind of the surface dwellings, and how he's going to make it look any different, because I can't remember who the colorist is on that. I don't know if Ticini's doing the coloring as well on there, but I think it looks really, really, really nice. So that's certainly stayed on for now. But again, that's another title that's had problems with solicitations. It keeps taking these kind of long hiatus, and for that, I'm kind of okay, because it is Rick Remender, and he's writing like 3 other books as well. So I think that's probably why Low is probably quite low on his list of titles. Obviously, Black Science. Oh, Tokyo Ghost. That's the other one. Did you try that one out?
No, I'm not really big on. Does that got anything? What's the premise of that book?
So it's a future apocalyptic world where everyone's kind of fixed into like entertainment and TV and ads and that, and it's kind of like in front of your face. You're kind of jacked into it, and that's the whole society. And they have these death races, and it centers on 2 characters. I think it's Debbie and Dent. or is it Debbie Dent and someone else? But they were kind of lovers. She's the only person that isn't kind of jacked into it all. She's kind of free of it all, but her boyfriend has totally immersed himself into it and forgotten, basically. He's just does his job. But they kind of infiltrate a kind of neutral zone, which is kind of very Asian, Oriental in feel. And there's no technology there, but they've been thrust in there to try and break down the barriers that are stopping all these waves and TV transmissions in there. The last couple of issues have been pretty intense, and it's got Sean Murphy on the artwork.
Oh, nice.
And if you liked, I mean, this is going back a bit now, but do you remember Joe the Barbarian?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, like loads of detail in there. And, you know, you kind of having to pore over like a double page spread for a while to, you know, take it all in. I kind of really do like that. Just, again, it's for the art especially. But the story's pretty good. I'm enjoying that one.
That I might check out then, because I didn't know, you know, I mean, post-apocalyptic, that's number one on the list, right? I mean,
I thought so.
Yeah, so anything like that. Yeah, I might check that out. I didn't know. I'm not a big fan of, I hate to say this, but I'm just not a real big fan of like a lot of the Japanese culture stuff in comics. I mean, unless it's,
it's not like that at all.
No, okay, yeah.
It's not kind of manga or anime-esque at all.
Yeah.
You know, I know you got the whole Tokyo Ghost, but no, it's. I think you'll enjoy it if you give it a go. There's no influence on there.
Because even like I can remember like reading X-Men or Wolverine comics, and they went to Japan. I'm like, oh. Or with Daredevil, you know, there's some Japanese stuff going on. I'm like, oh. You know, Spider-Man's moving to Japan. The first thing I thought was, you got to be kidding me, man. Like, they picked the one place that I just don't, you know, it's not that I don't care.
So what have you got against them, Scots?
Yeah, no, it's nothing like that. It's just, you know, I sometimes I think that it's so limited because you always think of the ninjas and the shoguns and the samurai and the, you know, the businessmen or whatever, right? And it, you know, sometimes I pigeonhole stuff like that. But the Spider-Man comic has been abso-freaking-lutely amazing. I love it. They changed the status quo so much on Amazing Spider-Man that I am completely sold on that. But
really, is that the Dan Slott one?
Yeah. There's yeah, I think he's doing that, isn't he? Yeah.
The Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, I think he's still on that. Yeah.
And you know, because they reversed everything, you know, Parker's not poor anymore. He's basically rich. He doesn't have to drive a moped delivering pizzas. He owns an industry now. You know, it's everything kind of reversed. So it's kind of nice that it's like that. Because a buddy of mine, him and I used to have conversations back in the 90s about there's no reason that Peter Parker should be like poor or anything like this. Like we talked about that in the 90s, he should be like, you know, he should be rich. He should be owning his own company and stuff. And now we're actually seeing that happen. So he and I talk quite a bit back and forth. Like we're finally making the comic that we think they should have made like back in the 90s. But, you know, speaking of stuff that we dropped, Revival and Thief of Thieves, those two were books that I was really excited for. And Thief of Thieves literally turned into just, you know, I would buy it and I wouldn't even read it. It was just like, I don't even care. And Revival totally went in a way that I didn't want it to go, like we were talking. And that is the number one reason I dropped that book.
So I never even started Thieves of Thieves. I kind of missed on that. Revival dropped, God, years ago now.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
No, I got kind of bored with it. Well, for me, there was too many separate storylines going about, and I just started not getting so much confused, but it was like, I need at least one of these to wrap up, or, you know, just focus on one of them for this issue rather than kind of splitting it into 4 or 5 different stories per comic. So I know it's one of Larassa's favorite comics. She's pulled her pull list right down, but I believe Revival is still there, holding on for dear life on her pull list. But no, I dropped that a long time ago.
That brings up an interesting point. Comics that have so much going on in them that you just can't seem to reconcile anything to it, and you drop them or whatever. But you take a book like Saga that is exactly like that. It's got so much going on. Why do you think a book like that works and other books don't?
I mean, you're right. I don't think it's got as much going on. And if they do, they'll only have kind of 2 of the plot lines going on of an issue, and then they may leave one of them, continue the other one, come back to another one. With Revival, it all kind of seemed to be happening all at once per issue. And I think for me, that is the difference. Because, yeah, completely agree. There's loads going on in Saga at the moment. Yeah. Kind of branches going off here, there, and everywhere, which you can see again. You can see, and again, this is another one. I can visualize how they're all going to come together, because, you know, they're all kind of heading in the same direction. If some of them are taking a longer way round to it, but with Revival, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see further on at all.
Yeah, and I think that Brian K. Vaughan is a master of compartmentalizing stuff. He just seems to be one of those guys who is completely able to take a chunk of story and fit it in, you know, like into the big picture of things. And there's a lot of people that have a really hard time doing that, just taking little pieces and inserting it into the big story, and it actually looks like it fits. But Brian K. Vaughan's one of those guys that he can do like these big sweeping epic storylines, and he does it like perfectly.
Well, while we're on the subject of Brian K. Vaughan, Paper Girls?
Never picked that up.
No. I thought that's what, I mean, given, you know, it's Brian K. Vaughan, you might have tried out the first issue. It's a bit of a kind of, again, you know, Image has suddenly got this kind of 80s vibe going on. It's a story set in the 80s, but there's a kind of time traveling element to it as well. It's just finished its first story arc, and I think it's on a little bit of a hiatus. So it might be worth going back, you know, if you're interested in that. You know, give that a go. It's good. It's good. It's kind of building up. It's more kind of sci-fi, kind of 80s, but there's a lot of weird, strange things that kind of you're not sure what the hell is going on right now. I mean, it's only kind of 5 issues in, so I'm quite happy to go with the flow at the moment. But there are some weird and wacky stuff going in, and the finale of this story arc was a little bit of a, whoa, oh, we're going there. Okay. So it might be worth, if you see them, picking that up, or maybe just picking it up in trade, and having a read of that.
Well, Dan at the comic store, he'll let me open stuff and just read it. So I'll probably check some of that stuff out and just read the first couple of issues and see what it's like or whatever, and just, you know, pick it up if it's really interesting. That's kind of what happened to me with you and I were talking a little bit about Rumble, because there's only like, I think 2 or 3 of us picking that Rumble up, and I picked up like the first issue that, opened it and read it, and I was like, I didn't even know what I read. And I'm like, I gotta buy this. This is gold, you know. And I still feel like that.
See that? I mean, I tried issue 1, and I thought, okay, I didn't put it on my pull list. I thought he usually gets issue 2 as well, before he just stops getting them, and he'll only buy them if people have pre-ordered them. So of course, by the time I got to the comic book shop, issue 2 had all gone. So I thought, oh, right, okay. I found 3 and 4 in like a bargain bin and tried to find issue 2. The artwork again, love it. It's is it Arcudi? Is Arcudi on that? Yeah. Arcuda, something like that, yeah. His artwork is really fun and exciting. The story for me, I don't think it's the fact that I just missed an issue out, but again, it was one of those kind of confusing what's going on, and because I wasn't, I hadn't kind of done that contract with my comic book shop that, you know, I've ordered it now, I'll pick it up and still give me a chance. It's like, oh, I'll pick it up in trade, but still haven't got round to doing that. But you're enjoying it, yeah?
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's a huge scarecrow with a sword. I mean,
what more can you say?
Yeah, his real spirit is trapped somewhere else, and he's trying to kind of fight to get his real body back and stuff. So it's kind of cool. I mean, it's really weird though. I don't know. It's just so weird because it's supposed to take place during normal time, but there's all these weird creatures and stuff. It's almost like a Men in Black, you know, there's people that are hidden and they don't really look like they look until you throw the cloak off them, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, this 12-headed hydra thing walking on these like peg leg things, and you're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. I love that kind of stuff.
See, it's interesting because that feels kind of very Oriental, kind of,
yeah,
almost manga-esque, but not. But you hate that stuff.
I know. I don't know what it is. I'll have to sit down and really search my soul and see what it is that I don't like about that culture. You know, I don't know. I shouldn't say the culture. My God, there's going to be Japanese and Oriental and people emailing me and cursing me out. I don't mean the culture. I just mean what it is I get sick and tired of the whole ninja thing and the whole, you know, like anytime I have to read about the hand, it's like, oh my God, I know all about the hand. I don't want to read any more about the hand. You know, it's like Hydra. I don't care about Hydra. I don't care about Shield. I just make them go away. They just, you know, anytime AIM shows up, they look like freaking yellow beekeepers. Shoot them in the head and move on. They're not, you know, I know that there's supposed to be advanced, intelligent kind of thing, people and stuff, but it's like, who would walk around in a yellow beekeeper's uniform and try to pass off that they're intelligent? Nobody. That's stupid.
Let's stick on the Marvel for a while now, because again, I apologize if I wasn't paying attention at the time, but I know you obviously being a big Marvel fan. There was a couple of books that I wasn't sure that if you were collecting them or not. Not Trying Silver Surfer?
No.
Dan Slott and the Allreds.
The what?
It's written by Dan Slott and it's got the Allreds on art.
Yeah, it's the art. That's why.
Really?
I can't do his art. I can't do it. It's and I can't explain it other than to say it's so, I don't know, it's so simplistic almost. It's so cartoony for me that I have a hard time taking that kind of stuff seriously. Again, because I'm such a continuity buff, I guess, to a certain degree. Like, I want everything to be a certain way, you know. I have my hooks in the legalism of comic books, I guess, and certain stuff just drives me nuts, you know.
You can't have been too happy then, way back when X-Force came to an end and they changed the artist to Michael Allred. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Went to Ecstatics, which I loved.
I think that I don't have those books actually. I don't know. I'd have to look, but I think if I have them, it was just like, oh yeah, for the collection. I I have certain books like that I just throw into the collection. But his stuff is, you know, when he was doing Madman, that was perfect, man. That character is perfect. His art's perfect. That concept of his art for that character was perfect. But you know, I don't know. Have you ever seen? I'll give you an example of why I say that. Certain artists, more than writers, certain artists will draw characters that you know and love, and you have a hard time with it. You know, I love Mobius, right? And when he died, I was sad. I think I shed a tear. And all the heavy metal magazines and everything that I've had, and I've read Mobius's work for years. And he put out a Marvel portfolio, and it was quite a long time ago, years ago. And he did a bunch of portraits. He did Spider-Man, Wolverine, Iron Man, a bunch of them, and they were so different. I mean, Mobius's work is very different. And when you see his work on Marvel characters, like I remember looking at the portfolio and just thinking, part of me loves this, but I don't know if I could ever read a comic book with them looking like that in the comic. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like that with guys like Allred or you know, another guy who just, if I didn't already have spinal damage, I'm pretty sure that from jerking my head back from the comic, I'd have spinal damage. And it's the guy who wrote or did the art for Fantastic Four for a long time. What was that guy's name? Oh, I'm so bad at names.
Is this quite recent?
It was a couple of years ago.
When the main series ended? You're not talking Delgado, are you?
No. Oh, I love Delgado.
Oh, that's all right.
It was oh, I love Delgado. Yeah, I can't remember now. I will remember though before we're done. I hope. Okay. I'll have to think about it.
Did you? I don't know if I saw this or not. Squadron Supreme.
Yes.
You are picking that up.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I must have missed that one. Oh, that's right. I'm a kind of on the fence with that at the moment. I've not read anything previous to this, so I've kind of not got that great a knowledge. I picked up Squadron Sinister from the Secret Wars tie-in and kind of like that, which is why I kind of wanted to jump on this. But I just don't know what it's doing at the moment, or what direction it wants to be in.
It's a strange. The book that's coming out right now is kind of strange because originally, I mean, this is a team that showcased back in the Avengers, back in like, geez, I think like the late 60s, and then even in the early 70s they were in some. And there was a 12-issue miniseries that came out in the 80s, and they're basically like the Justice League of America, but the Marvel side, right? Hyperion is like Superman, and then you got Power Princesses like Wonder Woman, and there's the dude that looks like the Owl who's kind of like Batman, and there's all these kind of similarities.
Yeah.
And the book that you have now, though, has really changed the team format. There's only a couple of people from those teams, and then you have guys from other teams that are like put in that team. Like when Marvel did, remember the New Universe back in the 80s when they were putting out like Psi-Force and Kickers Incorporated and DP7. There was a flashlight character in DP7 called Blur, and that's the guy that's in.
Right. Okay.
So they have different people kind of put in that book, and there's going to be a Hyperion series starting, a solo series, and also the guy who's dressed. I can't never remember his name. I keep wanting to say Night Owl, but isn't that the dude from Watchmen?
Yeah. Is it Nighthawk?
Yeah, maybe it is Nighthawk. Anyways, he's the Batman dude.
The Batman-esque one, yeah.
So that book is coming out too in a solo series. So I think before long that Squadron Supreme actual title will really change around again. You probably get a whole bunch of new different people. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what it'll be like. I'm hoping they don't drop it. Like, I hope that they keep going with it.
Yeah, because right at the very beginning, you obviously had the chopping off of Namor's head, which was they haven't really got back to yet, and that kind of was like, what the hell's going on here? And I thought it was kind of going down the Exiles kind of route, where are we in kind of alternative universes here? I don't think it is, but certainly what. We need to get back to Namor's head, because that can't stay like that. Surely
that was a little shocking. I'm like,
it was.
Oh, okay, you know, he's decapitated. That's kind of a major character in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. They've been using him for quite a lot just previous to Secret Wars, and then just all right, so we've got a new one now. Don't need him anymore.
They'll probably say maybe he was a Skrull, or I keep going back to that whole evasion thing. He was a Skrull.
Yeah. They could probably use that line further down where they got themselves. Moving on from there a little bit, Vertigo seem to have kind of re-emerged again. Are you picking, apart from Mastro City, which are you picking up?
I don't think so. No.
I can't remember you saying that on your list. That's all. Which again,
no, I had to think about that.
But there's a really, really good one from Gail Simone at the moment called Clean Room. It's kind of like a psychological horror one. It feels kind of very Vertigo in its big heyday. The kind of Constantine, Hellblazer, kind of mid '80s feel to it. It's really, really kind of creepy. And messed around with kind of nightmares and stuff like that. Might be worth a look at when you're in the comic book store next. And it's just like, what the hell is coming out of Gail's mind? It's a little bit, ugh! And going on with the horror as well. And I've missed out on this. I've been trying to find back issues of it, but there's a Dark Horse one out called Harrow County.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got that?
I haven't got it, but I looked through, I think, the first issue, and it looked pretty dark.
Yeah. It's kind of got that kind of horror, but it's more ghostly, more kind of culty stuff in there. That's one I forgot. I mean, obviously, because you've been out of the kind of YouTube game for so long, there's stuff that you wouldn't have mentioned because they finish now. The Fade Out. Did you read The Fade Out?
No.
You're not into kind of Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips crime noir stuff? Because you like the criminal stuff, don't you?
You did. I got the first 4 issues of The Fade Out, and it totally. I don't know why. I just completely lost interest in it. So I have to go back and get the rest of that. Is it done?
It's done, yeah. It's finished.
Yeah, I didn't even know how it ended. You know, the first issue is like, remember the big oversized,
yeah,
like a Savage Sword of whatever kind of. It was like a cover, not a cover swipe, but you know what I mean. It was like an oversized one.
Yeah,
I got that, and then I got, I think, maybe 2 or 3 more, and then I just didn't get the rest of them.
Oh no, it's a really, really good story.
Yeah.
It's that kind of, certainly a very downbeat ending. It's not happy. Well, they never are they? But but
nobody ever goes to the store for Haagen-Dazs at the end of those books.
No. Another one that was quite kind of grim and is Nameless. Did you read that? Grant Morrison and Chris Burnham, kind of sci-fi Cthulhu stuff.
Well, let me tell you what happened with that. I got the first issue and I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And then I got about the third issue. I was like, I don't know. Grant, I get excited, you know. I'm like, oh boy, Grant Morrison's doing something, you know, he's doing a comic. And I get all excited. And then the last 2 or 3 times that he did something, I just got so disillusioned with him. He can do so much better than the stuff he does. And it's just probably because he's on so much drugs. But, you know, he's a big proponent of LSD. You could clearly see in something like Nameless. And I just didn't, you know, it was shock for shock value again, you know. I thought it could have been so much cooler, so much more mysterious. And then all of a sudden it's just like, you know, when you're watching a really good movie and it's really mysterious and there's some creepy stuff going on and you're like, this is awesome. And then they just throw in like, oh, it's a werewolf who's doing it or something stupid, you know. Oh, it's a big slimy chicken or something. You're like, oh man, this doesn't make any sense. That's what that Nameless was like for me. It's just, I just didn't like it. It was, you know, he used something that's been used to death.
I liked it.
I know there's a lot of people that liked it. I'm probably the only guy who didn't like it, but I'm getting, you know what, the older I get, the more persnickety I seem to get, the more fussy I get with books, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I know you don't collect a lot of DC titles, really, but have you tried out the new? Well, it's that kind of a mini series of the Swamp Thing with Len Wein writing it.
No, I'm as far as muck goes, I'm a Man Thing guy, and if I get Swamp Thing, I feel like I'm cheating. No, if it's just a mini series, I would probably get that. I didn't know that there was one coming out.
Yeah, it totally does. It disregards everything that when he came back in the New 52 with Scott Snyder and what Jeff Lemire did. It was right. Jeff Lemire, yeah. I'm sure it was. It just dismissed, and it goes kind of like back. It's kind of old school Swamp Thing, even before Alan Moore took over it. It's going right back. So that's kind of why I picked that up and loving that.
That is definitely something that I'll go back and pick up. That I didn't know that.
I think that's something you'll appreciate, the whole nostalgic element of it, at least. I mean, just from the first couple of pages, you know it's kind of Len Wein writing this. It's very wordy. It kind of almost over describes what's on the panel in front of you, but it's got that vibe to it. Yeah,
I love that. I love when there's like 2 things on the panel and it's like 200 words to describe it. Oh, I love that kind of stuff. No, the only 2 titles I pick up from DC are Astro City and Batman 66. That is it.
You must have got Sandman the Overture.
Yeah. Was that DC or Vertigo, though?
That was, well, did it come out on yes, it did. It came out on the Vertigo, didn't it? But you did, yes?
Yeah, I remember I remember emailing you the last issue, and I said, I shed a tear. And I'm not lying. I was upstairs. I actually, for once, I was in the comic book room reading, because I don't usually read in there. I usually read in where I watch, you know, movies and stuff. So I was in the comic room, and I thought, I'm just going to sit here and read this. And it's very serene in that room, maybe from all the books. I don't know, so much nostalgia in there or something. But if I sit in there and read, there's this vibe I get out of there, and I just love it. So I sat down and I read that book, and it was like this lone tear trickling down my cheek, and I was like, I loved the way that ended. When it ended the way it ended, I got up immediately and came down and emailed you, because I was like, he knows exactly what I'm feeling at this moment. You know, it's like, it ended, and then all of a sudden you can just reach for all the other ones and start them all over again. You know, it's like, oh. It was awesome. I loved it.
Stories of it, and I keep looking at it, and I keep meaning to mention it because clearly you have a Star Wars T-shirt on there. Did you Star Wars Marvel back there now? Did you pick that up?
I picked up issue #1 of the Star Wars, like the actual Star Wars title.
Yeah.
And I hated it so much because of the voice that they gave Vader, the way that they wrote Vader was so far from his character that I couldn't. To remain a Star Wars fan, truly, I wasn't able to continue reading those comics. It would have really tainted me, I think, because he was saying stuff that Vader would have never said. And I understand that it's comics, but it just, we, as comic collectors, we hold up the comics as the canon, right?
Yeah.
But in this instance, the movies, the original 3 movies from, 79 and 82 or 83 or whatever, and the last one, those are kind of the canon. And just the way that he spoke, the way that his phraseology and everything was just, I put it down. I was like, no.
I was kind of, for me personally, because I tried a few of the series over at Dark Horse and just found them, personally for me, it was only kind of like, I enjoy watching the Star Wars movie, but I'm not like, I know every single character. I'm like a fanatic about it. And I just found the Dark Horse ones were leaned more towards the fanatic Star Wars fans who had that in-depth knowledge, while the Marvel one for me seems a lot more accessible. And I'm understanding at least what, over maybe 80% of what's actually going on. And I'm sure that extra 20%, the real fans are lapping up, but I'm just missing it. But hey, that's fine with me. So I'm kind of enjoying that more.
Remember, was it last year or the year before they put out, I think it was a 6 or an 8 issue series, the Star Wars, and it was the original script?
I remember. I didn't get it though.
That was really disappointing too. It was kind of neat to see how he envisioned everything, like what the character was going to look like and all that kind of stuff. That part of it, that side of it was really interesting. But at the end of that series, I put it away and thought I probably won't read that again. I didn't like it. It's not my Star Wars. That's somebody else's Star Wars. That's the creator's Star Wars, and that's fine. That's what he created. That was his vision. But what I saw as a kid up on screen is the thing that affected me and shaped my views and my images of those characters. So if somebody brings something to you and says, it's like if somebody reimagined, Sandman, and they said, okay, well, this is what the original Sandman was going to be, and you read it and you're like, what the heck is this? You'd never really accept it, even though that might be the original purest form of Sandman.
Right,
you wouldn't accept it as that. So that's kind of how I felt with the Star Wars stuff.
For me, there's a lot of the DC titles which are ending for me anyway because of the whole rebirth, reboot, whatever they're doing here. So while I'm kind of sad to see a couple of them go, I'm kind of glad because it now gives me the opportunity to buy more Marvel, because I'm getting back into the Marvel. I've said before, my origins come from Marvel. I was a complete Marvel fanboy. And then over the last couple of years, just Secret Wars, I just completely dropped off everything bar, I think it was Daredevil at the time. But now I'm getting to, like I said, I've got one Avengers book, I've got one X book. I'm surprised I haven't got a Spidey book, but I don't know. I'd kind of got a bit saddened by Dan Slott when he did the whole brain switcheroo. It was kind of interesting, but it just wasn't for me, and I kind of dropped off from that. But I'm glad to hear there's another Moon Knight title coming out. Looking forward to that. And hopefully, I've not read a lot of it, but I'm sure they've solicited one for the Punisher as well.
Yes, yes. We need to get another Fantastic Four book online, though. I mean, this is just ridiculous. There's never, I can't think of a time when there was not a Fantastic Four or a Fantastic Four, you know, type book out there, and there's just not, and that's wrong.
This is true, and plus I think they want everyone kind of to forget the awful movies, because they keep putting out an awful movie after awful movie. They just don't seem to be able to show them on the kind of like the cinema screen properly and do them justice every time. They've always got to mess around with something.
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, Fantastic Four used to be a huge title for Marvel. And just kind of like it, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years or so, if maybe not a little bit longer, you know, those numbers have kind of decreased, and they were like, it's the first Marvel comic, really. What happened?
Brian Hitch, that's the shithole artist that did the Fantastic Four stuff.
He remembers.
He's the only guy that I've ever seen draw Marvel Woman or Invisible Woman. She looked like a hag, man. She wasn't. Invisible Woman is a sexy, voluptuous, honking woman, man, and he drew her like some kind of a laundry woman, some kind of a cat-loving, friggin' tuna stinking, just you scratching her ass, walking down the hall, you know. It was horrible. I hated those books. I hated them.
And I'd just like to wrap up Pure Comics podcast now on that. What a way to end the podcast, folks. Everyone give Scott a clap. Oh, seriously, no. Thank you very much for joining me today, Scott. It's been great talking about comics and what you've been reading or not reading.
Yeah.
Shocked me a few times.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's like I said, it feels like coming home, you know, and it's just so nice to do the first time I've done any hangouts or anything was with you. So it's
we got there in the end as well. You people out there don't understand what we've been through this afternoon, this morning, trying to get Scott on a Google Hangout. Woo.
Much blood was sweated.
Anyway, thank you very much, Scott, for joining me. Thank you to everyone who's been watching. And I will have another podcast up soon with another new person, chatting away for an hour about whatever next. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Scott.
Bye.